Bridget Weiss. I'm the superintendent in Juneau, and I am fortunate enough to serve in the place where I grew up. So I am a product of Juneau, and I'm really excited to share a picture with you of Abby. And this is at the top of Eagle Crest, and was just a couple of days ago on a beautiful evening when I needed some fresh air. So this is Juneau at its best, and I'm really excited to talk today a little bit about implementing restorative practices. So we committed as a district through that equity policy, we have equity teams, we have a district equity team, we have building equity teams. We have embraced difficult conversations as a school community because we understand that this is one of our priorities. It's written into our strategic plan. So there's another alignment piece: policy to strategic plan, to initiatives, to resources, to practice. All of that has to be in alignment to have any true ultimate impact or be able to sustain the effort long enough so that you see that impact, right? So I think those are some of the valuable pieces of having that policy. But the flip is also true, that if you only have policy and you don't have practice, then your policy becomes worthless. So that becomes the work of the people, the human resource. That becomes the work of leaders, of teachers, of staff, to really commit to practices that support our work in equity. So restorative practices is an example. We have several, but that's one example of really embracing some strategies that change the experience of kids. Policy, if it's going to live on a shelf, never impacts the experience of children or staff that are working with them. And so restorative practices is just a great example where, while it's connected to a policy, in action, it supports kids in building skills that are really lifelong skills, because as we know, as adults, we continue to have conflict with people. Oftentimes, we are often in a position as adults to build community. Our families, our work environments, those are all communities. Our maybe volunteer work in a community are all remain very important to us as adults. And it takes skills to negotiate how you maintain a supportive, high functioning community. And so not only does the restorative practice strategy support kids in school and managing their worlds there, it also begins to build these lifelong skills that help them in the workplace, help them being a high functioning family member or employee. So it really has some multiple layers of impact. I guess an example would just be how we wrote. The first step was writing our new strategic plan for 2020 to 2025, because we had a lot of really good things in our strategic plan. It was a well-written plan, but there were areas that were not as specific as we wanted them to be. So we took an extra step in our current strategic plan to name what we meant by all, as an example. So rather than under equity, which we had represented in our plan, and we said we want these metrics: graduation rate, discipline rates, academic achievement levels, etc. We want those for all kids. That's what we said. That's novel, and I mean that's noble. However, the difference is in our new plan, we looked at our data and we found 3 student groups where we were least successful. They were our economically disadvantaged students, our English language learners, and our Alaska Native students. So in our new plan, we identified the metrics under equity, duplicated from our achievement, and we said, in these 3 student groups, we will we will work toward these gains. And we named the metric, our goals in those areas. So then we take that strategic plan and we identify action around that. So what are we doing in those areas? Then we look to our social emotional work, our trauma informed work, our training for staff, Restorative practice is one of those strategies that lines up. It's an initiative that builds community. We know children learn best in a community where they feel safe and healthy and well supported. And we know conflict is an obstacle to learning, and it provides ways to reduce conflict and resolve conflict. So it lined up, the so what of restorative practice lined up with our metric in our strategic plan, which lined up with our policy. And in between, sort of what I would describe as sort of layered in between all of that, is your resources, because your priorities are reflected in your resource allocation. So we have found ways to support this work. We've done that through grants. We've done that through decisions around what positions we might need to carry this work out. And we've applied for grants. We've added social workers. We've added reading and equity specialists. So we look for opportunity for resource that lines up with these initiatives. We've been really fortunate in the Juneau School District to have a strong priority around equity. And we've done that by actually establishing an equity policy. And school districts are starting to do this. We've had an equity policy in place for a number of years. And what that does is it strengthens all of this work, because it allows the school board to make a statement that this is a non-negotiable, that part of our mission as a school district is to carry out an equitable access and provision for education. And that's a tall order. It's not easy to do that. And so by having a board policy that makes that statement and allows then us as administrators, as teachers, as counselors to prioritize that is really important. We need that alignment from policy to practice. And if that's not aligned, the practice becomes too vulnerable. If somebody doesn't like that you're tending to this, if somebody doesn't feel that it should be a priority for the district, it's pretty vulnerable. And by the alignment all the way up through from practice to policy, again, it substantiates it. It gives it legs, and it gives it strength to sustain the weather, or sustain, gosh, maybe a pandemic, and so forth. So that's one of the powers in policy, is that it really does invigorate and inspire and ensure the practice.